Hello, everyone. I guess we can start our webinar today. Thank you for joining. And before we start the main part, I just want to give you some tips how you can ask questions. You can hear an icon called Q&A at the bottom of your screens. And if you have a question, please type it there, and Alexander will answer all your questions after his presentation. So now, again, thank you for joining, and I'm passing the word to Alexander.
Yes, hello. Let me just get set up and share my screen. So warm welcome to another edition of the Luxoft Technology Seminar. This time we look a bit into the digital cockpit and how things look from that perspective. What I thought we would do today in the time we share together is that I give you a quick intro about myself and about Luxoft Digital Cockpit. We kind of connect to where Alvin left off with the mobility revolution, and we try to better understand what implications and what opportunities that will have from the perspective of the digital cockpit. And in a nutshell, it's really about bringing stunning user experiences on the road. I would like to spend some time then with you to walk through our solution accelerators, which I think make us really very, very unique in the industry. And then, of course, I'm happy to take any and all Q&A in the remaining time. So a few words about myself. So I'm Alex. I'm based in Munich, and I'm heading up the Luxoft Digital Cockpit within the automotive line of business. I'm doing that for about a year now. Before that, I was the Chief Experience Officer for a company in the car industry that has been acquired by Luxoft. And prior to that, I worked for other companies in the car industry on the supplier side and on the OEM side, as well as the mobile industry. I very much have a focus on software in automotive, on bringing designers and developers together, and also on leveraging open source software in and for the car industry. So if we recap quickly where we left off in the last session, there are 4 megatrends that very much determine what's happening in the digital cockpit going forward. First and foremost, of course, there is the electrification, where we transition away from the traditional combustion engines to essentially a completely new architecture for cars. And that drives a radical redesign of the electrical architecture, and also has a profound impact on the supply chain, of course, that we all work in. This trend, of course, started on the high end, on the premium side. But if we look at how various countries follow suit with regulations, how various car companies also set out goals there, it will impact us all, and I think we will see some quite interesting new entrants in this space, all enabled by the electrification. The second big megatrend is autonomy, and that, of course, is currently kind of the Wild West in the industry, where everyone is really trying to claim its stakes, and where we have a lot of innovation there. But at the same time, I think we will also see completely different types of expectations in terms of the user experience in a car that drives autonomously. And of course, this will not come from one day to the other. We will see a gradual development, and we will see multiple stages, how we kind of evolve from level 3 that we see the first cars here in Germany on the road, to level 4, and then to fully autonomous robocars that are announced and are already shown in concepts. So while there is a huge investment in this space to make such systems safe and reliable, I think it also unlocks, first of all, of course, a lot of time that we currently spend with paying attention to traffic. But this gain in time, I think, will also drive a dramatic change in the user experience in such autonomous cars, and the requirements, of course, that those cars and their systems will have. The third megatrend, the sharing economy, again, from a digital cockpit and from a UX perspective, is extremely important. Because if you think about, if you change from a product to a service, there are different brand touch points involved. There is all of a sudden a different type of loyalty to a certain brand. And while that trend is visible in society overall, in the car industry specifically, with a new pattern of no longer owning, but sharing transportation and sharing mobility. Traditional players in this market face a huge opportunity to provide completely new mobility and transportation services. Again, a very strong impact on the user experience, and the role of the user experience in those new settings becomes increasingly important. And what that means in the end, when you're no longer buying a product, but when you're buying services, and in the end, when you're buying an experience, the convenience of your digital lifestyle is extremely important and is a must. It must be a convenient experience, and it creates a need for the car or for your transportation means to be a natural extension of your personal lifestyle. Just think of the music you consume, or the entertainment you consume, or the news you consume, but also maybe the information you provide. Your digital lifestyle must follow also in settings where you're transported from point A to point B. So to sum up all those megatrends, we use the phrase mobility revolution. And it is really about zero emission, zero accidents, and zero ownership. And that is nothing less than a fundamental paradigm shift in the automotive industry. And in this new landscape, there is, of course, also a great opportunity for us to contribute in new ways. And we at Luxoft Auto, for us, it's contributing with smart technology that enable the mobility revolution. And today I would like to discuss in more detail about how this mission then actually is reflected in what we do in the digital cockpit space, where we put stunning user experience on the road from pixel to silicon. We also have two more domains under the hood, where we implement platforms for autonomous drive, and we have extended vehicle, where we look at connected mobility solutions that basically expand the automobile to mobility. Those two domains we will cover in separate sessions. Today we look deeper into the digital cockpit, and we will show you how we co-create smart solutions there that in the end empower our clients to make the transition to sustainable mobility. So if we start looking into digital cockpit, and how we empower the mobility revolution there. It's really the combination of design, technology, expertise, and a scaled agile way of working. Those things together provide a package that we believe manufacturers, suppliers, technology vendors all need in order to win in this mobility revolution. And we look at all screens around you. It's not just about the center stack, not just about the cluster and head-up or reset. It's really the entire car. Everything becomes a display. So we look at all screens around you. And if you look at concepts at recent motor shows, increasingly the cars also communicate with their environment, with pedestrians and with the outside world. So while we today kind of more look in the cockpit, we in the future will also look at how the car communicates with the outside world. For us, it's very important to start with the user experience. So we have a team that looks at the digital user experience, at interaction and graphics design. It's based in Echterdingen near Stuttgart, and we always start with the UX side when we discuss new opportunities. Also, as part of Digital Cockpit, we of course have a group that has unparalleled navigation expertise, which is in autonomous and non-autonomous settings still a very important component to look at. And we do have, and I will dive into those in a few minutes, a quite unique set of solution accelerators with Qt Automotive Suite, with PLUX, and with Populous, that altogether in the end really seamlessly connect the consumer digital lifestyle to a core experience. There are two almost punchlines, you could say, that we strive and we live. The first one is from pixel to silicon. So we always take a holistic view on a system, from pixel down to silicon, because we believe that the stunning user experience is based on a deep understanding of both design and the concepts behind that, as well as the underlying software and hardware platforms. So if you think about rich and fluid interactions and 60 frames per second, and such requirements that I believe many of you are familiar with, then it's not only about the design and the interaction, but it's also the entire graphics pipeline down to the GPU that you have to master. So we try to really look at things holistically and look at projects from pixel to silicon. So you could say that we focus our expertise as a vertical slice through the entire system. That does not mean that we have to do and we are doing everything on our own. It's more the contrary, that we work with selected ecosystem partners in the open source side of things, but also on the technology and silicon vendor side of the market, to really bring innovations to the market, to the consumer. And let me maybe for a minute also stress a bit the importance of silicon vendors, which we believe really define the capabilities of tomorrow's systems. And that's why we work very strategically with them to enable their hardware in software. So it's holistic view, pixel to silicon, and really also goes beyond the ECU, then looking at the vehicle integration and working in ecosystems and communities. And the second kind of concept punchline approach that I would like to highlight is that we look at things from concept to production. And what does that mean? That means that we start with evolutionary prototyping, that we also then, of course, support during A, B, and C sample stage, that we support production programs, that we support update and maintenance releases post-SOP. So it's an end-to-end delivery that we are typically engaged in. And the way how we do this, the way how we combine design, technology expertise, and capacity is by a scaled agile way of working that I will touch on in a bit. And that really, to me, makes a huge difference. It's actually the combination of unique technology, unique expertise with scale. And that's what we all need, what our customers need, what the industry needs in order to win in the mobility revolution. As one concept, I already mentioned the scaled agile framework, which is a baseline for our way of working, and which is continuously refined by our industry veterans. And you could say that kind of in a setting where software eats the car, we really bring a software way of working and also platform thinking into the core industry. Good. Now, after kind of those 3 intro slides, let us look a bit more into the details of our solution accelerators that we typically use in our engagements. First of all, it's our renowned UX team in Echterdingen. Many of them with a background from the Hochschule für Gestaltung in Schwäbisch Gmünd, which has, of course, its own merits, as we all know. And what we do there is that we have a very skilled cross-functional team, ranging from psychologists, UX experts, usability architects, and technical writers. And we combine that team to do usability testing, also work on specifications and documentations, of course, but also take ownership of the UX management. If you think of all the variants and all the screen sizes and the handling of all the graphical assets, that is also something where we have gained a lot of expertise in large-scale production programs and found a very smart way of working. We also engage on concept stage, of course, in industrial design, screen design, motion design, but also extend that then, of course, in production settings. As you can imagine, 3D visualization becomes increasingly important, and that is something our experts are also familiar with and driving forward. And if you carry on another 5 to 7 minutes, I have a couple of very interesting slides and give you an outlook of what's cooking in UX. Maybe in terms of connecting back to autonomous and the setting there, one area we are currently researching is responsive UI, scalable UIs. How can you deal with different screen sizes? Or in the end, if everything is a display, how can you actually create a user experience that's both immersive and also from a usability perspective, really good? So that's the questions we are researching there. Moving forward, Hero Automotive Suite, which is a part of my personal background as well, is a digital cockpit reference platform that is based on Qt. Qt is the renowned UI and application framework that originally was created by Trolltech and then later used by Nokia. Now the Qt company is taking care of that. And Qt Auto adds a modern multi-process architecture as a key enabler. And all of you who have experienced head unit projects in the past will know that that is actually a big shift if you look at that from the UI perspective, where typically the UI is seen as a thin layer on top. This actually enables a modern architecture that you know from consumer devices, and that has a completely different approach to how you can update applications, how you can update the framework. Qt Auto also comes with a reference UX that we are currently developing in a new version that will be presented and first shown at CES. So whoever is around there, please drop us a note and visit us at our suite in the Venetian. Qt Auto is dual licensed and developed upstream under the umbrella of the Qt project. So we really try to do open source the way it was intended and work upstream as much as possible. There is a lot of value in reusing good ideas, we believe. And to mention it, Qt Auto is a collaboration project between the Qt company, KDB, and Luxoft that we are very proud to be part of. And in the true Qt spirit, it's all about code less, create more, and deploy everywhere. Then going down the software stack, we have PLUX, which is our open source embedded Linux system, and it serves as a blueprint for the automotive use. It integrates components from Genevi, and it helps you to create your baseline Linux system. Again, open source is something that's very close to our hearts. PLUX is developed completely in the open on PLUX.io. Just go there and check it out. And it comes also with continuous integration and deployment integrated based on Jenkins. So we also look always on the combination of technology and methodology. How can we integrate a new technology in a way of working that is really beneficial and that creates additional value? PLUX works with Qt Auto, as I already said. It works with Genevi, and it can and is actually also used for telematics systems. It's really a roll your own distro, and open source done right. And for us, the baseline for future high performance computers for the digital cockpit. Next is Populous, which is our in-house tool chain for rapid HMI production. It runs and scales down to many platforms. Also environments where you may face AUTOSAR, RTOS systems, where you often have constrained hardware, where you often have incredibly hard boot up requirements. And the highlights of Populous are the handling of the graphical and functional variants. So that really is a core strength. If you know how many variants of a specific system exists, and what that means to the complexity, we have built in great support there, and it scales down very, very low in terms of the required hardware and the required operating systems. And in contrast to the approaches mentioned before, you develop the business logic without embarking into C++. So we also look at, of course, different team setups at different projects, and then are able to balance and select the right solution accelerator for a specific setting. Moving on to managed services, which summarizes our way of working and which really brings everything together in an end-to-end software development process. It's very much about agile principles and blueprints and cross-functional teams. And it's really about the mastery of software development and software deliveries in successful automotive projects. And if you think about how many innovations are around and how many innovations actually need to be deployed into cars to allow for a user experience that's actually superior to your next generation consumer device, then this way of working is extremely important and extremely beneficial. It's not always easy. It's sometimes a challenge in an industry that, like the car industry, that has found its way of working over the last 100 years. But we do see great interest and actually great feedback and openness also to learn a software way of working that we are presenting here. I won't go into the details of how we set it up with hub and spoke models. I think that's actually worth a separate session. But it is for me an integral part of our offering and something that really ties everything together and ensures successful project delivery. Good. It's almost the bottom of the hour, so let's look a bit ahead and let's have an outlook into the future of UX in this new world of mobility services that we all share in electric cars autonomously driving around. And I hope that this picture gives some inspiration for some of you. I won't go that far to say that we no longer need living rooms and apartments and only something that drives us around. That's maybe a bit further down the road, but I very much like that picture as an inspiration for thinking. One topic we are currently researching is mixed reality and the blending of physical and digital worlds. And what that means to me is really how can you use that technology, that approach, to create an even more stunning UX that exudes the brand with every interaction that you have with it. And if we look a bit further ahead, then maybe there are no more dedicated displays in a car. Maybe everything then is a display with projection mode, or in a VR setting where you basically get everything projected in your head-up. So there are concepts that we are currently working on and that we will be showing at Embedded World in Nuremberg next year. So please make sure to block that in your agendas and pay us a visit. There is one picture here showing how that could look like in a setting where a car drives autonomous, or maybe not entirely sure if this is a level 4 or level, I assume it's a level 4 setting, where I could envision that this also greatly supports handover scenarios and builds trust into the driver / the consumer actually using and feeling safe in a car that drives on its own, but from time to time will hand over control to the driver. So in summary, we see big usability advantages, and we also see that there are completely new ways how to create an immersive UX that you then control via gestures and voice, for example. Good. So that was a quick run through to what we are up in Digital Cockpit and how we look at the mobility revolution from our cockpit perspective. I want to also say a few words about Luxoft and where we are located with Cockpit. So we are an independent company, of course. In auto, we have 2,000 plus employees, and we are in Cockpit at these sites. Luxoft is, of course, much bigger with much more sites. I'm focusing here on the Digital Cockpit sites, where our colleagues in Odessa and Kiev, of course, play a main role. Then our sites in Germany with Böblingen and Echterdingen, but also Sweden, and then looking at the US, of course, where we have some very interesting opportunities for us in the next years to come. And saying that, we are hiring, we are growing, we are looking for talent, we are looking for you to join us in locations such as Berlin, Bucharest, Munich, Gothenburg, Kiev, Odessa, Krakow, and many, many more. So it's really about getting in touch. And well, I hope that you will ask a lot of questions. I also hope that you visit us at careerluxoft.com automotive and get in touch. So all our opportunities are out there, and we would love to hear from you. And with that, I believe we can start the Q&A.
Let me just help you, because I can see questions, so maybe
Yes.
I can just read it. So could you please list down some silicon vendors?
Silicon vendors we are engaged in? Yes, absolutely. And now I think I also found the QA. Thanks for that. Yes, we are publicly working with Intel, for instance. We have joint demos there with Intel. That's also something we will be showing at CES at our suite there in the Venetian. Other silicon vendors are, of course, NVIDIA. That we had previously public demos at GEV events. It's, I think, okay, thanks for the reminder where the Q&A is. So it's, I would describe it as a way, silicon vendors that are very active in the consumer space and are entering or about to enter the car industry for the digital cockpit space. For the autonomous drive space, things may be a bit different, and there are other vendors that we engage with. But speaking of cockpit, for now, it's really the Intels, the NVIDIAs, the Qualcomms, and the Renesas of this world. I hope that it did answer that question. The next question that I see in front of me is, are we executing projects that involve submitting code back to the open source community for our clients in automotive? Very good question. So first of all, we work upstream when and where possible. We also work with software components that are sometimes dual licensed. That means sometimes we work in an open source context, sometimes we work in a commercial context where we do not share. And in some cases, we are actually asked on behalf of our clients to take on the upstreaming of software. So I think the answer is yes, we do. So let me just orient myself. So silicon we had. Do we have any expertise of using PLUX in UI test automation? That I believe is also a very good question, but I have to pause on that. That's something I'll take offline. Could you shortly compare HEL and PLUX and what gives more? PLUX compared to HEL. You're asking nice questions. Thanks for that. Maybe let me take a step back and look at industry initiatives there, because it actually was the first Geneva members meeting in Detroit where I and a colleague presented a kind of pixel to silicon story to the car industry, and I believe that Geneva, for instance, has had a lot of contributions in actually getting Linux accepted in the industry and also serving as a platform for connecting minds that thought along the same lines. So HEL has a bit of a different approach and has maybe its gravity at a bit of a different location on this globe. But I think both initiatives and in general, what the Linux Foundation does is really great and is something that we fully support. With PLUX, we wanted to create something that we can evolve over time, that we really can build on, and that we can work fully upstream. If you're interested in compliance statements with regards to HEL and Geneva and so on, please get in touch, and then we can discuss that in more detail. Good. Then Josh writes, thanks, I'm very excited about this space. Is there a term that you use for the process you just described, process to solution? What I try to convey is that we have pixel to silicon and concept to production. And that is embodied in our way of working, which is based on the Scaled Agile framework. And I'm happy to share my contact details. Yes, of course. So it's on the chat for all of you to read. Then the next question, Andre asked, how do you ensure the speedometer is displayed in real time without freezing? Are there any regulatory requirements? Yes, there are requirements, specifically when it comes to telltales and check controls and things like that. We do have solutions for safe HMI that cover those things, also for quick HMI. And I hope that we can announce what we are currently working on, which is the Luxoft Safe Renderer at CS. So one of my colleagues is working on that right now. So that we make sure that maybe in hopefully in appropriate words, that the rich and fluid eye candy plus the safe and quick HMI meet in a setting where both can excel. I hope that did answer your question. And there is, of course, a lot of work. And again, that's, I think, one area where you really have to think from pixel to silicon when it comes down to making sure that there is no jitter. And it's really we need to look at the entire signal graphic display pipeline in combination to ensure such systems. Good. Jan Paul asks, can I run your software on low-cost hardware as Raspberry Pi? Yes, absolutely, you can. I'm not entirely sure if we have a pre-built version, but you can run Pilax and Kiroro on those systems. I mean, the Raspberry Pi is around since quite some time, and always had reasonably to great Qt support, also in terms of Wayland drivers and GPU acceleration. That's definitely platforms you can use for that one. Absolutely. Good. There is one more question. I'm just looking at the time. Are you not afraid that trying to become a supplier of products and services on the automotive market, Luxoft, on the one hand, will lose focus on outsourcing, on what we are able to do well, and on what we know? Well, without going into any sophisticated business strategy here right now, I think it's very important to observe the market. I think it's very important to look at the market in terms of who is running the business, who is changing the business, and how can you, as someone doing business, remain your competitive edge. And therefore, I think it's really important and the right way to look at the industry to see how we can provide smart solutions that empower the mobility revolution. I think that's an approach that I fully support and am in line with. And I will stay away from commenting further on the questions regarding the business strategy in this session. We have another question. Is your software solution based on 5G standards or something else? Which I would answer with saying that, of course, all connectivity solutions will work with 5G, but not everything we do requires 5G, which I hope answers your question, Jan-Paul. Good. Do you have own US patents regarding AI is also a question that I like to take in writing at a later stage. Do we have any expertise in PDAX test automation? We take that later. And a question that then looks a bit beyond the car industry and more into robotics, which I think is a very valid point, because many things we do are, of course, not limited to automotive, specifically if you come closer to the silicon. But also in software, I think the cross-pollination between various industries is something that's extremely beneficial. So if there are specific questions around robotics that were mentioned there regarding ABB, please drop me a note and we can take that offline. Very good question. Can you name any car models where we can see your product? This presentation showed a couple of concept cars we were part of. For other announcements, I have to ask for your patience. We are announcing collaborations at CS. But this presentation really is targeted at the entire car industry. There are, of course, many cars with our technology on the road, and that goes across Populous, PDAX, and Qt Auto. But I think that is not necessarily the forum to go into any specific brand. I think it's an offering that's relevant for all car manufacturers, the incumbents, but also the new entrants. But if you look carefully at the slide material that I believe will be shared on as a webcast on YouTube as well, I think you get the idea. Then Charles asked, what are the main market blockers you're finding with adoption of autonomy and the digital cockpit? Well, I think it's for me, it's safety and convenience in a way that and of course, as I said, it will not be black and white. It will not be one day level 3, next day level 5. There will be an evolution, as with every technology. We will see an adoption curve. Some will move first, some will follow. Also around the globe, this will not necessarily happen in perfect concert. We will see areas where the big cities are already starting such approaches to look into how to make them more sustainable, a better environment for living. And I think we will see adoption there first. There is, of course, the question about regulation and things like that. But I think they will be addressed in those locations first, and others will follow. I would not say that we see any blockers that cannot be addressed at this point. Good. So I think there is currently no more question left in my QA that I would be prepared to take directly in this call. But we have 6 minutes left. So last round of questions for those of you who are still around.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much. It was really interesting presentation. And I just like to say that we'll definitely send to participants all answers in writing. And we would like to ask you guys to stay online for a minute more, because we would like you to fill out a small survey for us to make our LTS webinars better. So please, it will take just a minute and it will help us a lot. So also please stay tuned and follow our accounts in social media, because we have a lot of interesting topics for you for the next year for webinars. Actually, the next webinar related to automotive will be in the end of January, and I think we'll send all notifications as soon as it prepared, and well, it will be a really interesting topic. So thank you so much, Alex. It was really interesting. Well, guys, thank you for participation, and well, I wish you a good evening.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you.